Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar titled the RTTS Webinar on Postman and API Testing. My name is Bill Hayduk. I'm the CEO of RTTS. Chad Hickman, an RTTS lead and an API testing expert, is going to kick off the webinar with a short presentation, and he'll follow with a brief demo. The webinar's target time frame is 30 minutes. Our goal on all these webinars is to keep them short and to the point. And we'll be providing the recordings of all the sessions at a later date, which kind of reminds me, if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into the Q&A panel. We'll answer as many questions as we can after Chad's demo. Also, please use the chat to alert us if there's any issues seeing or hearing this session. Thanks again for your time and participation, and now we'll begin. Here we go. So it's all about the quality. RTTS, our firm, is the premier pure play automated QA and testing expert. We've been providing automated QA and testing solutions since 1996. As I said, we're founded in 96. Our headquarters are in New York City, although most of us are working remotely. Our customer profile is the Fortune 1000 and mid-sized companies. We've had over 700 customers, and below that you can see we have a bevy of automated testing solutions along with key technology and partners and automation tools. Here's a brief list of our 700 plus customers covering pretty much every vertical in the last 26 years. If you want to see a more complete list, it's on our website. Now a little bit about Chad Hickman. Chad's an expert in all phases of software testing lifecycle, from requirements analysis to test case UI, mobile UI.
Bill, I think we lost you, but I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. Hey, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day. Thank you, Bill, for the intro. Today, we're going to talk about API testing. Now, you can test APIs efficiently using the Postman application. So to start, we have to start with the basics. What is an API? An API stands for an application programming interface, and it brokers communication between software products and is a technical contract in which data is sent and received. As an example, if you look at this diagram I created here, very simple diagram, but it just shows how an API helps assist in the communication between an external web app and an internal database. Think about, some of you might have heard this scenario before, but think about an API as a server at a restaurant. Instead of the customer communicating directly with the cook, the server relays that communication similar to an API. You wouldn't want your web application to have direct access to the database, so we have to manage that access through an API layer. Let's look at another API use case, specifically for a banking app. A banking application can consist of multiple different functionalities. Some examples are listed on the right under services. You can have account balances, authorization, payment, withdrawals, peer-to-peer payments, etc. There's much more things that a banking app can provide, but these are just some examples. The problem is, how can external clients and end users access these specific services? The most efficient way would be through APIs and an API gateway. This will allow the client direct access to specific functions needed while providing other necessary features like security, monitoring, and rate limiting. So let's take a deep dive into a specific flow, and let's use payment as an example. The payment flow from a front-end perspective might require multiple different services to be able to execute that payment. For example, there might be authorization, account details, and payment all involved in that one payment flow. As an API tester, rather than going through the entire flow to make sure the payment is working correctly, API testing allows you to execute tests from each specific service. So you would execute specific tests on authorization, payments, account details, all separately, which leads to more efficient testing. Now that kind of leads into this next topic, the importance of API testing. As mentioned, it allows you to test specific domains, but according to the chart on the right, quality is currently the top priority for dev teams and organizations when developing. So what better way to ensure quality of APIs than testing them? Through API testing, you can confirm functionality, performance, and security before delivering to the integrator and set up automation for regression purposes as well. API tests are typically quicker to execute than UI tests through Selenium specifically, which allows for quicker regression. Early isolated testing and easier automation leads to more efficient testing within an organization, which leads to less bugs and retesting, which eventually leads to lower costs. So what does RTTS use? Hence the name of this demo. We use Postman. So what does Postman provide? So Postman is an API platform centered around building, collaborating, and most importantly, testing APIs. According to Postman's State of the API, this chart referenced below, the Postman app is referenced 80% of the time when respondents are discussing API tools, making it one of the leaders in this space. This slide just gives an idea of how much the API ecosystem has grown from 2020 to 2021, along with the use of Postman. There's 17 million users. Collections created was up 39%, requests created up 56%. It just shows the growth in this specific area. Now, what are some features that Postman provides that RTTS needs and uses? The main thing is Postman provides a user-friendly UI to manage API repos through collections, environments, mocks, etc. It also provides the necessary tools to execute and verify API requests throughout the software testing lifecycle. This includes built-in automation, authorization, and the ability to create scripts with custom code via JavaScript. It also provides features that gives us the ability to test the below. These are only a few, but these are some of the main things that we're looking at to test when we're testing an API. Specifically, API security, API workflows, REST or SOAP services, response times, etc. So to highlight some of the things Postman can do, let's review the application directly in more depth. To represent this, I'm going to be demoing Imager public APIs. For those not familiar with Imager, it's a public image hosting and sharing site used by some social media platforms, including Reddit and Twitter. There are many public APIs out there. I think there's even a GitHub location that you could go to see what APIs are public, but you can connect to those public APIs. Imager, the only thing it does require is it requires you to create an application to be able to authorize yourself. You're most likely going to have to do that for most public APIs out there. But once you do that, you're going to have access to everything that you need access to. Okay, so let's dive in. So to start, I want to begin by showing my Imager profile. Now I'm doing this because I just want to show what the UI looks like and how APIs can be used to populate an interface. So here's my Imager profile. We're going to stick to the favorite section here. So basically I went through, it's a newer profile, not much going on, but I'm going to stick to the favorite images I have in the past. So I have two folders, one for programmer humor. I think most of us should be familiar with that. Everyone loves this, has a good laugh. And then there's some space photos here. So you might be asking, how is this page populated? How are these images fed to this site? So this is where we dive into Postman. So everything being fed to that site is going to be through APIs. When you first open Postman, you're really going to see a blank screen, a blank workspace, I should say, because you're not going to have any collections or environments imported yet. But to get started, we have these two buttons up here. So new and import. You could either start new, create HTTP requests directly, collections, environments, etc., or you can import a specific file. In this case, I have created two Imager API files already that I'm just going to go ahead and import. After the import's complete, you can see down here, there's two notifications indicating that it's complete. And you can also check yourself. As you can see in collections, we have the API collection up. In environments, we imported a new environment. I'm going to go ahead and delete this environment that I created because I already have one here ready to use. You could also check in the top right corner, there's an environment dropdown. This just basically lists out all your environments. You can select an environment directly through here as well. So this is the API collection that Imager provided. As you can see, everything's broken out in kind of a domain-based way. You have your account actions, get, post, delete actions with it for the account specifically, comments, albums, galleries, images, etc. I mean, this is basically everything that Imager uses to provide whoever's using that site with the functionalities that they need. We're going to stick to a small subset of APIs since we're kind of limited on time here. So specifically, we're going to focus on my account favorites and then drill into those images and how to use tests. So to start, I'm just going to make a simple request. So you can see the request is set up. You have your request headers, your scripts, everything. I'm going to dive deeper into what each of these mean and how you can use them. But for now, let's just make a simple request. As you can see, the request was successful. You can check in the response pane down below. The 200 OK was returned, indicating success. And then along with that, you can check the list below and review all the account favorites that are associated to my profile. And just to confirm, let's just make sure that all the IDs are actually returned, and they are. As you can see, in Imager, there's 6 total images, and Postman is returning 6 total image IDs. So now let's look at how this request was set up. If you look in Postman, environment variables are key. So as you can see, there's these variable names here that are surrounded by curly braces. These are needed to reference your environment variable. Just to show an example, if I select no environment, all these things are going to highlight red because there's no environment selected. It's trying to reference these variables from an environment. It's not finding anything. But with the environment selected, you can highlight over username, highlight over access token, and all your credentials are there, pulled directly from the environment. Environment variables are really key in managing your variables throughout your entire collection. So for example, if I need to use username in an account call, I could just do the same exact thing. Just reference this username from the environment and then go from there. The key in my mind to API testing, and I've seen a lot of cases where folks don't manage their environments well, but I think the key to Postman and succeeding in Postman is managing these environment variables and knowing how to use them within tests. Environments are critical in managing credentials and making sure sensitive information is not maintained in the API request itself. As you can see, I'm showing my environment. Postman provides you the ability to hide these specific credentials if there's sensitive information you really don't want anyone to see. And the way you can do that, just drill into your environment. You can select secret, and then it kind of just encodes all these values. So now let's review tests. To do this, I'm going to jump to another request, and this is specifically to get an image object. So this will take in an image ID and then return the image object. It's basically going to be a list or a single item from this list of favorites. So the one thing that I didn't dive into yet is all these different tabs that Postman has available. So there's your parameters. You can populate your query string parameters using this directly. Your authorization tab, this is where you can implement any security that you have on your APIs, gain an access token directly through the authorization tab within Postman itself. Your request headers, this specific request only takes in the client ID that I've created. This client ID, well, let me go back to the environment. So the client ID and client secret just come from the application that I created within Imager. they'll give you all that info. The body, so if you want to request body for posts, puts, whatever kind of request you have. And then you get into the finer details of kind of how you can customize your API request. And this is primarily through pre-request scripts and tests. So this is an example of a pre-request script. I'm actually not using this currently within this specific API request, but I wanted to show you what can be done through a pre-request script. The pre-request script, it's gonna, any functionality within these is gonna execute before the actual API request. Tests are going to execute after. So that's important to keep mind of in case you're adding some customization here. So in this example, what I added, we're basically just we're gonna set a random name environment variable through here. Simple, but I did want to highlight that Postman gives you the ability to use dynamic variables. And this could be really useful if you're trying to do data-driven tests, or you just don't have an idea for a value to use and you want to just use a random value. So you can, with the same double curly braces, and then the $ random first name, and Postman provides a list in their documentation of all the dynamic variables they have. You can basically use this to set a random name. Let's just test it out real quick. So Eliza is the random name right now. Send this request, got 200 okay, it's good. This name's gonna change, it's now Marge. So I think data-driven testing is the main place where you're gonna look at this, just to test all different names out there. Now let's dive into the tests. So as API testers, this is gonna be one of our most important functionalities that Postman provides. I just set up some basic tests here. So test response codes, response headers, response times. And I also have a test down here to actually pull a value from the JSON response and just compare it with the image hash that we passed in and make sure it matches. Some simple tests, but I wanted to go over how this can be done. So after I made those requests and you look at the response bodies, or the response pane, I should say, there's multiple options down here as well. Any cookies associated, headers, and then there's the test results. So as you can see here, this is giving you a consolidated list of all the test results based off these tests that you identified in the test tile. There are 2 for response time. I'll go over why in a second. But there's also the status code check, content type, response header, and here's the ID one that I'm checking that the ID hash matches what's in the request to what's in the response. Another thing that Postman makes it easy to do is add tests. So if you ever need a reference or a coding reference on how to get an environment variable, set one, clear one, etc., you can look at these code snippets on the right side. I know it might be a little small for everyone here, but basically Postman provides these code snippets that you can just insert directly into your testing pane. So let's just say, let's use the status code one for an example. Let's jump up here. Oops. So if I wanted to just insert a simple status code test, this will be useful if you're trying to insert quick test into your testing pane. You can just click on this, Postman will do it all for you. Very simple. They make it really easy to add these basic tests. Now, if you want to get more complicated, that's where you're going to have to write some of your own code. And I do want to point out, I mentioned this before, but all this code is in JavaScript. So there are some JavaScript libraries you can import as well. But for the most part, Postman does provide what you need for these basic tests. So now let's put it together. So when we talk about API workflows, you're most likely going to run into situations where you need to group together API requests. I mean, you're going to want to test one-offs as well, but there could be cases where you want to test multiple iterations of a specific request. So I've created this account Postman Runner, or account favorite runner, I should say. And actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention one thing. I wanted to highlight why there was 2 response times in here. Don't want to leave everyone hanging, but if you look at the folder level, Postman also provides you with the ability to execute tests on the folder level itself. So that's why there were two, because I have this test on the folder level. Any request under this folder is going to have this response time test executed. So then this is also going to be valuable if you want to check response times across all APIs, response codes, values, etc. Okay, so let's jump back in to the runner. So I've created this account favorite runner. Basically just consists of these same two API requests, account favorites, and then getting the image. Let's say for a use case, let's just say we need to pick up all the account favorite images from the user profile and verify all those same 5 tests for each ID under that profile. Postman allows you to do this. And you're going to have to write some custom code in the pre-request scripts and tests to do this. But it should be fairly straightforward. So I'll show you the differences between these requests that I have right here to the below request I just reviewed. So if you look at the pre-request script, simple. All this is doing is setting an environment variable. Then if you look into the tests, all this is doing is basically taking that response, going through the list of images that you have and just storing an image ID array in your environment. So I'll call this, show an example of what it's going to look like. That code is going to execute after the request is submitted, and then you're going to have your array of image IDs. So now let's go over the Imagerunner. Very similar to the first request, it's going to take in the image hash or image ID, whatever you want to refer it to. The main thing here is you want to get that variable that you set for your image IDs and then use that throughout the tests. So I don't want to dig into the code, but you can do that through here, get the variable, set each image ID from that variable, and then proceed. This is the main piece on how this will work through a collection runner, is this block of code right here. So you're going to want to run your collection runner and set your next request as these IDs are picked up. So as this favorite images, you're going to get the favorite images. If it has IDs, what you're going to do is you're just going to check to make sure there's an ID available. If there is, you're going to set your next request as an image runner. If there isn't one available, you're going to set your next request to null. Basically, this is just going to run the same image runner request, verify those 5 or 6 tests that you have for each of the images under your favorite section. So now let's put it in action. So if you select this folder, Postman has this run button up here, and this will open up your Postman runner. So as you can see, we have the 2 requests here. Postman gives you the ability to select your number of iterations. Let's just say I wanted to run the same test 5 times. I'm not going to do that today, but if you wanted to, you could. You can set a delay in between your requests in case you want something to pause for a little bit until your next request is set up. And then they also give you this option to select a data file for data-driven testing, which also comes in handy. Let's just say you have, I don't know, 1,000 different values of a parameter that you want to test in a data-driven test. You can easily import a CSV or JSON and do that through this. For now, I don't need to do anything with that. I created my scripts through the pre-request script and through the tests. We should be good to go. So I'm just going to add a little delay here just so we can kind of see what's going on. And I'll click run. So as you can see, the first request that's made is going to be the account favorites. It stores that array of image IDs I was referencing. Then the succeeding requests are going to be to test those specific images, right? So as you can see, for each specific request, we have the 2 response time tests, status code, content type, and the IDs matching what's in the response. And just to prove that these are actually pulling from my imager profile, I'll go back to the UI, paste this in, and as you can see, these are one of the space images that was on my profile from the beginning. There it is right there. So that's kind of a brief overview of what Postman can do. I know there's a lot more functionality that Postman provides, but this gives an idea of how you can use tests and pre-request scripts to execute your scripts and verify that the API request and response are working as you want to. If interested in more, I recommend reviewing the Postman website itself to view some other features Postman provides or ask any questions to us if you would like further info. So I think that's all I have for you today. So thank you all. Now I'm going to send it back to
Great.
Bill.
Great. Can you hear me, Chad?
I can hear you.
Great. So thanks. We'll now answer questions. Please type anyone's that you may have into the Q&A window if you have not already. Nihar Desai, another of RTTS's team leads and an API testing expert, is going to moderate the questions. Nihar, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Bill. So for the first question we have, I have a team that will be using Postman. Is there a way for their work to be connected to a repository to share among members?
So yes, there is. Postman has its cloud-based version as well. You can easily manage version control and external integration with Git repos.
Another question we have, can I use Postman tests and integrate them with my existing CI/CD pipeline?
Yes, as well. So through integration with Newman, you're able to execute Postman tests and collections directly through the command line. This is going to benefit because this enables you to include your Postman regression test directly within your CI/CD pipelines.
Next question, do I need to sign up to use Postman?
So you don't have to sign up, but there are some benefits. You're able to sign up with Postman to be able to sync your Postman workspaces and access some of the features like mocks and APIs. If you don't sign in, you'll get like the bare bones features of what Postman provides. Just so happens you'll still have access to collections and environments, the main things you need to execute your tests.
All right. What is the difference between Postman's paid services and the free standalone version?
So the free version is more for individuals, which is in most cases sufficient for your testing. However, if you wanted to use Postman as more of an organization level, or you have a large team and you want to collaborate directly between your team, any of the paid versions might be a better fit. But Postman provides all this on their website. You can review their pricing plans and it gives a nice breakdown of what the differences are.
How much coding experience would one need in order to do basic API testing?
Not much experience. You just need the basic understanding of object-oriented programming. And basic understanding of JavaScript will do. And like I said, with the code snippets, it should make it fairly straightforward to add any custom test you need in there that Postman already provides. Postman does also provide good documentation for what you can actually write in your test. So, well, let me just share. So I'll go to the Postman website itself. If you're looking to learn more and how to perform these specific tests, there's this learning section here. There's a bunch of documentation, a bunch of webinars. Postman actually has great documentation for learning new stuff and how to create new things in test scripts, create new things in your pre-request scripts.
Okay, next one, how is security handled so that unwanted calls, no unwanted calls are made to production?
So security is usually handled through the authorization tab. It's going to be handled on the API layer. So whatever you have on your API layer specifically, that's where it's actually going to be managed. But to be able to verify that through Postman, what you can do in here, you have this authorization tab. So as an API tester, API security is one of the more important things that you're going to want to verify. So if your API security is set up, you shouldn't be able to get through without necessary keys and client IDs. And then you have your environment. So this is where you can kind of manage your specific testing and production environments. So you're going to have a test URL, a test environment, and then you're going to have your test applications. This is all of these credentials will be managed through your environment itself. And that's how you can manage connecting to test or connecting to your production environments. And actually another useful tip, now that I'm on this, I was just thinking about that. Another useful tip to prevent calling production by accident is name your environment variables different. We've run into this in the past. Let's just say you have an access token. You want to stay safe. You don't even want to take a chance of calling production. I recommend naming something like prod access token, right? So if you're in your prod environment specifically, you're never going to be able to get an access token because it's going to be named different.
All right. What platforms can I install Postman on?
So desktop apps are available for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, but they also provide a web app that you can access also, which will allow you to execute and run Postman on, a tablet or anything like that, anything with a web browser.
All right, guys, I think we're out of time. Thanks, Chad and Nihar. That wraps up our Q&A session. Thanks again for everyone for your time and participation today. We'll be sending a follow-up email to you with the webinar recordings and our contact information if you have any additional questions. Thanks again and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.